Good afternoon, Jeremy. Yes, I founded Unplugged to unite people and organizations committed to reclaiming childhood from addictive technology. And so your conversation with your listeners today is at the very heart of what I do.
Okay, and you would rather children were not on screens at school?
Well, I think realistically, as children get older, there are probably some very good uses, intentional uses of tech in the classroom. But I think for early years, there's absolutely no reason that children should be on screens whatsoever. And I think it's a tragedy that children in primary school are being asked to use screens during the school day or set homework to complete online. And we know from the evidence how damaging it is to children, both on the physical side, but also on the emotional well-being side, to be, in front of screens so much.
Well, that is the key thing, I guess. If it is damaging to be on a screen, then we should do it as little as possible. David Ellis is Professor of Behavioural Science at the University of Bath. You say that tech has got a vital part in education going forward, David.
Absolutely. I think once children leave school, then they're going to have to use this tech. And we want children to leave school so that they can open a bank account, use the NHS, get a job. But also, all that education is about them being able to protect themselves further down the line. And if you want an example of where that go wrong, most people will be aware of potentially grandparents or older adults who struggle to use some technology and are more vulnerable to scams. And actually, that's not their fault. That's because they went through an analog world. But we're not in an analog world anymore. We're in a digital world, and education has to respond to that.
Yeah, okay, I understand that. But of course, David, that's not an excuse to have screen on all day long. You can learn how to use a mobile phone using it 6 hours a week.
No one's suggesting that they need to be at a screen all day long. But screens have been in school for many, many years. It's not a new part of the education system. It's possibly become more dominant in the same way that it's become more dominant for all of us. It's reflecting the real world.
Is it possible, Jennifer, not to be rude about it, but back in the day there would have been an equivalent of the Unplugged Coalition that would have been complaining about books in schools? If you go back to the 1600s?
Listen, I love that question, because if this movement had really taken off back when EdTech started and when screens in school started, then yes, you would have a point. But this is after a 12 or 13-year experiment on the world's children with regard to smartphone and social media use. And with EdTech in particular, as you said in your intro, this is accelerated greatly through the COVID pandemic and since. And so now we see the impact on children, and we can act. I'd really just like to take issue with the professor's arguments there. The first of all, the third one was almost starting with that. It's the real world. We just have to go with it. Well, I'm more ambitious for our children. We can and we must turn back the tide for their health and well-being. So I'm not willing to give up on this just because it seems to be so prevalent to have screen use as the default in and outside of schools. Secondly, he said, use of digital, children need to be able to become digital natives to open bank accounts and use the NHS. The idea that they have to have their homework done online rather than in textbooks so that they know how to use a banking app when they're 16 or 18 is absolute nonsense. Children can become digitally literate, if we want to use that phrase, by an hour a week of supervised internet use at school or by parents at home. And then the third argument the professor highlighted was they have to learn how to protect themselves. I think putting this onus on children to be safe online is really repugnant. Children, you can never be safe online. You can be safer, of course you can. But at the end of the day, a 6-year-old, there's no need whatsoever for them to be online. It's our job as parents and educators to keep them safe by keeping them offline unless they are supervised.
And Jennifer, you're saying that there are schools which are giving tablets to children as young as 6?
I don't know if they're taking them home, but they're definitely have them use them in schools. Yeah, absolutely. And I think, I'm not a Luddite. I'm not saying that there isn't specific intentional uses of technology and screens that can be very beneficial for children. But it's gone way too far. It's become the default. And we need to turn back that tide. And I think increasingly parents are asking for that change and educators are starting to reflect.
Is it, David, I don't want to sound like a Luddite myself, but surely we know that there is a massive increase in depression and anxiety among young people in the last 10, 15 years. And the only thing we can see around us that might have done that leave aside the pandemic, which is very specific, but it's social media. It's everyone finding out that everyone else is happier than they are. And once you turn on a screen, that's where it leads.
So first of all, I never said go with it. I mean, there's a responsibility of educators as much as there is government and tech companies to get this right. So I'm not saying we just carry on blindly. In terms of the question around, is depression rising, is anxiety rising? Look, there are many things we know impact children's development. We know that children who grow up to be healthy adults are loved in the home, are well fed. These are fundamental things that govern children's mental well-being. Technology is actually a comparatively small amount of that. And every piece of research that's been coming out over the last few years has confirmed that those effects are very, very small. Now, that does not let technology off the hook, because there are harms online and parents are absolutely right to be worried and concerned about it. But we have to look at the bigger picture in this. The things that impact children's mental health and well-being are outside of that tech system as well. Are you
sure? Because I wonder whether, as a professor, you see now young students aged 18 and 19 whose attention spans are totally shot. Because I see that, and I'm not even teaching.
Well, I think when we ask people about technology, we always get exactly what you just said. Like, people are rightly worried about it, but there is no evidence to suggest people's attention spans are getting worse than they were before.
Really?
I turned on.
I asked my daughter to watch the film Witness with me. After literally 10 minutes, she already knew the ending and she was bored. I mean, what's going on here? They've just seen too much. They've seen too much.
It is natural to assume. I mean, certainly the way that people are consuming media is changing. There's no doubt about it. We've moved from longer content videos to short content videos, and that is changing. I'm not disagreeing at all. There's definitely a consumption change. But there's a big jump between that and saying, look, someone's attention span is their cognitive attention span is getting worse, and we just don't have evidence for that. Now, again, that doesn't mean that it's not there. Doesn't mean that it's not happening. But as a scientist, I'm only going to say what we have evidence for.
Well,
again, doesn't diminish the arguments about the worries around technology or what it could do.
I understand, but listen, if your house is on fire, you don't ask for evidence, do you? And at this point, we have some sort of crisis in the minds of young people that is related to, it's maybe attention span, it may be anxiety, depression, whatever. Something's going on here. And the only thing we can work out is connected must be screens.
Well, but you have to look a bit deeper than that, because there's many other things around young people that we know affects that. You've already mentioned the pandemic yourself, to then just say that it's just screens. I mean, that also undermines the fact that there's lots of... It also changes the fact it depends ultimately what people are doing on the screens. And the other person talking there was right when he said that, it depends what you're doing. I mean, is homework on a screen a bad thing?
Well, Jennifer, that is a good point, because I've got an iPad myself, tablet, and I know it can do 101 things, and maybe I've just gone to the 10 that are harmful. It's not good to be on Instagram all day long, but you can also draw on it. You can do calculations on it. You can go online and you can explore a city you've never been to, and these are all good things, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. No one's saying that there aren't benefits from using technology, but I think we're adults and we have agency and our brains are fully formed, and so I think we have to take a really cautious approach when we put children in front of screens, because, as you say, it often leads to social media or other activity which does not provide educational benefits. It is very habit forming. We all know. I hold my hand up to say, despite working in this area, I'm on my phone and I'm online too much. It's very, very habit forming.
But that's social. I mean, it's social media what you're doing.
Well, it is social media, but I think there's a difference, because we know I think it's a little disingenuous to say there's no evidence about the harm. We know, for instance, that children's handwriting and ability to write has lessened. We know that children are enjoying reading and reading less. And when you can't consume long form, whether that's visual or audio or whatever, then you're not able to think and to analyze in the same way. And so that is impacting on children's ability to have critical thinking. It's impacting on their ability to attain educationally. I mean, one thing that I think is fascinating is that IQ scores globally are falling. And that's true for adults and children. That's true across countries. And the hypothesis is it's because our attention spans, as you alluded to earlier, are falling because of all this short form content. And when we think about edtech, it is short form, right? It's gamification of education. It's quizzes. It's getting little rewards for, one little answer. It's not long form. It's not reflective. It's not writing out essays in a textbook. So this is
Okay.
the very essence of what's driving this attention spans reducing and educational attainment falling.
Thank you. Fascinating discussion from you both. Thanks so much for your time. Jennifer Powers, who runs an organisation called the Unplugged Coalition and would like to be able to opt her child out of screen time at school. Not the only one saying that. David Ellis is Professor of Behavioural Science at the University of Bath, who says we're blaming screens for too much. And actually, they could be great tools in the classroom. What do you think? Here's the new
Writing and ability to write